Hi, everyone. We're going to get started with our remarks. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to dinner tonight. We're going to get started with our remarks. And to introduce our first speaker, let me hand the podium over to Renee Witterstatter. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Renee Witterstatter. As Scott said, I'm a member of the Museum and Art Committee here at Fraunces Tavern. The germination to have one of our guest speakers here tonight actually started about 2 years ago. On a chance meeting at one of my book signings, I met actress Lenore Zen, who is the voice of Rogue in the X-Men cartoons. And we started talking about our love of history. Lenore mentioned that she had been involved in the government in Nova Scotia. I was currently working on the Birch Trials exhibit here at Fraunces Tavern. We started talking, and Lenore said, "Do I have someone you need to meet?" It is my pleasure to introduce our special guest tonight, Elizabeth Cooke-Sumbu. She is the descendant of an enslaved woman named Syl, who is listed in the Book of Negroes. Elizabeth is also an authority on the lives of the former enslaved after they arrived in Nova Scotia from New York. We are very pleased that she could be with us tonight. Liz is one of the founding members and the past executive director of the Cumberland African Nova Scotian Association, located in Amherst, Nova Scotia. Leading Kansa for 22 years, she worked to support the community in the development of poverty action, an organization once mandated to assist the Black community. Kansa elevated its services to also include persons with disabilities. She has been involved in the development of African Heritage Month and Emancipation Day, with partnerships developed with many local organizations recognizing Indigenous, Asian, and other cultures annually. Prior to joining Kansa, Liz started her career in Halifax. Oh, thank you. Should I start over? I promise it was very interesting. Prior to joining the Kansa team, Liz started her career in Halifax at the Cabinet Office for the province and has over 30 years combined professional experience working with all 3 levels of government. She continues to work with numerous boards, including being the co-chair of the African Nova Scotian Regional Northern Network, the African Nova Scotian Justice Institute, and she is associated with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Advisory member to the commanding officer. She is the recipient, among many more things. I'm kind of weird hearing my own voice. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Multi-Ethnic Sports Hall of Fame, Community Spirit Award, Southeastern Community Health Board, recognizing contribution to community health and wellness. And in 2022, she was the recipient of the Queen's Silver Jubilee Medal. Let's welcome Elizabeth Cooke-Sumbu to Fraunces Tavern.
So good evening, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here. As Renee indicated, my name is Elizabeth Cooke-Sumbu, and tonight I am representing my African, my American, and my Canadian families, Gay, Cook, Sickle, Lucas, and Halfkenny. I would first like to acknowledge that I'm standing today on the ancestral homeland and unceded territory of the Lenape people, First Nations here in the United States of America. I'm learning of their deep connection to this land, for whom their presence stretches back over 12,000 years. Politically designated Manhattan, it was once called Mannahatta by its original inhabitants, a land that was abundant both in air, on land, and the sea. Remembering today that we are all treaty people, I honor these stewards connected to this land, continuing the legacy of the Lenape First Nations people. So good evening again. And what a pleasure it is for me to be here from Amherst, Nova Scotia. And it is indeed historical for me. I promise not to take up too much time tonight with remarks, but I do have the mic, as you notice. And I can't say enough about the tour of this facility and the exhibit. The history related to the Book of Negroes is another one of those best kept secrets. And I applaud those who have kept the building alive in the preservation of American history, and certainly a part of my history. To the organizers of the Birch Trials, a personal thank you to my friend Lenore Zan, who Renee mentioned earlier on, who made this initial introduction. And Renee, very active with your group. She's been with me for about 2 years now, making this happen. And thank you, Renee, for that. And also Scott Dwyer, Scott, who is your executive director here, was certainly instrumental in looking after all of my logistics, and everything has been perfect so far. I didn't get that $100,000 check yet, but I know it's coming. Also, I'd like to give a special shout out tonight to my beautiful American cousins. They're all here. Yvonne Halfkenny and Regina Smith and Maxine Porter. And also, I have another relative who you probably all know, Dwayne Johnson. He's not here because I forgot to send the email, so forgive me. And also a special shout out to my children, Jean, Lisette, Paul, and Jess, who made sure I was dressed appropriately tonight. So in seriousness, I just like to say the exhibit is truly a milestone in my life, connecting 9 generations to the Fraunces Tavern Museum. This is a beginning as Black people for my family and the journey to Nova Scotia. It all started here, boarding the HMS Thesis in the summer of 1783. Syl Williams, at the age of 15, had her name recorded on the muster roll in the Book of Negroes, along with Captain Frederick Williams. The difference between Syl and many other Blacks registering here for travel to Nova Scotia is that Syl didn't have a birth certificate. Syl traveled as the property of Captain Frederick Williams, who at the time owned property in the Bronx and used slaves for his workforce. Upon arrival, Syl survived the cold winters on the Chignecto Isthmus. She survived enslavement after being sold to Colonel Samuel Gay, where she took her name. She lived her life out as a mother and to many children, and worked as a domestic with Magistrate Henry Purdy. And when she passed away, she was nearing the age of 100 in Fort Lawrence, just outside of Amherst, Nova Scotia today. So 9 generations later, we are still standing. Our family having established one of the first land grants for the AME Church in Amherst, and owning the original stagecoach stop in Amherst, home to the Amherst Royals, one of the colored hockey leagues of the Maritime, team that produced 3 Black NHL leaders 130 years later. Syl Gay is the matriarch of the Gay family of Cumberland County, Nova Scotia. And in closing this lecture tonight, I'm sure you'll hear much from my new colleague, more about the Book of Negroes and the history that goes with it. I'm very pleased to be here to be a part of this intriguing story. And I'd just like to thank everyone again. And I'd like to close with a short poem. And it's called A Testament of Possibility. Impossible, they said, for her to be free, once shackled in chains that the world couldn't see. Impossible to claim a name of her own, a whisper in history, unknown and overthrown. Impossible, they said, for her feet to stand on soil she could claim as her own promised land. Cold winds of arrival, harsh with disease, tried to steal hope like the merciless seas. But impossible was just a word that she wore, and armor as fuel to push evermore. With perseverance and with steadfast grace, she rose through the trials few dared to face. And here I stand, or Sel Williams once dreamed, her legacy stronger than all that it seemed. Through the impossible, she carved out a way, and her spirit is alive in this land today. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're going to move on to our next speaker, who I'll introduce. Andrea Davis is a community builder, a natural leader, a strong communicator, and powerful champion for those who need to have their voices heard. She is a Nova Scotian born of Black Loyalist descent with ancestral ties and relationships within the communities of Birchtown, Shelburne, and Black communities throughout Nova Scotia. Andrea's post-secondary education includes a certification in investigation sciences and police studies, certification on adjudication for administrative agencies, boards, and tribunals, and a recognition of achievement in excellence in educating adults. She is working towards her certification in adult education. Andrea understands the Black Loyalist Heritage Society is committed to discover, interpret, promote, and safeguard the history of Black Loyalists and their descendants, and to the advancements of universal recognition of Black Loyalists as nascent Canadian heritage community, Her greatest source of inspiration is from her 3 wonderful children and handsome grandson. Andrea is a descendant of the entries of the Book of Negroes. It's my pleasure to introduce Andrea Davis, Executive Director of the Black Loyalist Heritage Society.
I understand, Liz, glasses are so important, so important. Good evening, everyone. How are you? I can't hear you. How are you? Let's make more sound than what they're doing over there, so we can get them out of the way. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you this evening and to share the story of the Black Loyalists, their journey, arrival, and life in Nova Scotia. Thank you to Scott Dwyer. We've been in touch a lot lately, so it's been great, Scott, for your support. And as Liz has said, the navigation of getting us around and logistics has been amazing. My Uber driver or limo driver was fantastic. He bought me coffee, he had treats and snacks, so you really set it up really good. I'm expecting that tomorrow morning as well, so. Just want to start off by thanking everyone else here as well. What I did is a sneak peek last night with Scott. So when I get in, although I was tired, I wanted to kind of get ahead of the game. And so I did drop by last night, and Scott took me around the museum and showed me the various floors. It's a beautiful place here. I have 1 level at the Black Loyalists in Nova Scotia at my center, but here it is just every room, when you walk into it, there's something new. And it's just amazing because you can't take it all in as much as you would like to. But I did have an opportunity to come back today and take lots of pictures as well. So that was good. So my name is Andrea Davis, and I'll explain the last name to you. No relation to Viola or Samuel Davis, none of that, but it is a strong Irish name. So I know somebody else said they were Irish. I was going, okay, I got you, because I'm Irish too, according to my DNA. Right? So we all are, right? We all are. I am the executive director of the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre, which is located in Birchtown, Nova Scotia. And as Liz said, it's the best kept secret. A lot of people do not know where we are, who we are, and our story. So what I've been doing since I came on is sharing that story. It's been a bit traumatic and hard because I'm also learning as I go along. I was born in Shelburne. And so being born in Shelburne, you are still part of a British colony. And for that, I think it's time that we had some movement. and some changes to that, not to erase any history, but just to include the Black Loyalists and the Indigenous histories in our communities. So I'm hoping that's something that we can all do together. I am also an 8th generation descendant of the Black Loyalists and have ancestral ties and relationships, as Scott said, to other areas and communities in Shelburne. I am the descendant of 2 entries from the Book of Negroes, Jupiter Farmer and Titus Milliner. Jupiter and Venus Farmer, the constellations have got nothing on these guys. I'm telling you, they think they thought of everything, but we've been there, have we not? Been there. So Jupiter Farmer would be my 8th great grandfather on my mother's side. He arrived in Port Mattoon in 1783 aboard the ship, the Diana. There's still a lot of work to be done and research to be done because a lot of our history is not written down. We rely on oral history for us to get what we need. The elders in our community are slowly passing on, and they're taking with them those stories. So we're finding it hard to gather all of those stories. So I am doing research every day to find out more about the families of the Black Loyalists. I'm going to see if I can get this right here. Scott told me what to do, but I'm probably going to mess something up. So, nope. Yes, I did it. All right. So let's start off with, like Liz did, the land acknowledgement. So Nova Scotia is located in the Mi'kmaq, and I should have my notes here so I don't have to keep turning my head. We talked about this, right, Scott? And I said, okay, I just need my notes here, but I think I'm going to probably need both. Although I could probably turn this screen here. So just one moment. You want to get that for me so I can read from that? Okay. I'm such a diva, eh? Look at me up here making all these demands. Never invite Scotians to the house, okay? Telling you, we got demands. So Nova Scotia is in Mi'kmaq, which is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The territory in Nova Scotia is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which was first signed by the British Crown in 1725. I'm now going to talk to you about the African ancestral acknowledgement. We acknowledge those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands because of the transatlantic slave trade and enslavement. We pay tribute to our ancestors of African origin and descent and thank them for their contribution toward transforming systems in ways that promote everyone's sense of belonging and safety. People, okay, there you go. Can you hear me? People of African descent have been in Nova Scotia for over 400 years, and we honor and offer gratitude to those ancestors of African descent who came here before us. So I don't have to talk to you guys about the American Revolution. I don't need to convince you of any of that because we know, and this is not a history lesson, and we'll be here for quite a while, but we do know that the American Revolution did begin in 1775. At that time, the Dunmore Proclamation offered freedom to anyone enslaved or indentured to an American rebel. That later would also turn to land offering as well. I was going to go to my notes now because most of it is written there as well. Many enslaved African Americans took up this opportunity to gain their freedom and went over to the British sides, as did a small number of already free African Americans. Some of the Africans provided military service alongside the British Army, while others served in non-military roles. In 1783, the American Revolution comes to an end and the British evacuate the United States. The Book of Negroes is a document that is created at that time, and it is a list of registered Black Loyalists who left New York which was then the home of the British General Headquarters. Over 3,000 Black Loyalists are relocated from the United States to Nova Scotia between April and November after fighting in exchange for freedom, land, and protection. The Africans were moved on Navy vessels and by private transportation chartered by the British. A small number were free Blacks. While many are evacuated without incident, a board of inquiry was established to adjudicate claims against Black Loyalists. We'll talk more about that later in this presentation. The Africans came from Virginia, Georgia, New Jersey, and parts of New England. Other Black Loyalists included members of the Black Pioneers, which was the only Black regiment on the British side during the war. Blacks were very smart. They served and worked hard. They were laborers, tradesmen, craftsmen, as well as ship pilots as well. That's a picture of John Farmer. Not sure if you guys, it's in this exhibit upstairs, which is fantastic. And of course, he would be an ancestor of mine. On my mother's side, it's a farmer, last name Farmer and last name Herbert. And so this is John Farmer. So the history, as I'm unraveling this and learning more, the history of the Herbert Farmer family is quite deep within the lands of Birchtown. So at one time, I didn't realize the importance of that family and of our families. We take a lot for granted growing up, not knowing the hardships of our family, not knowing their stories. It's until this age now, as I became the executive director, that I've learned a lot more about the Black Loyalists, their hardship, their struggles, and just their stories and untold stories as well. The largest settlement of the Black Loyalists was in Birchtown. Birchtown was once the largest free Black settlement in the world outside of Africa, housing over 3,000 people. The muster roll at that time showed 5,900 white loyalists and 2,700 Black loyalists in Shelburne. Of the Black loyalists, 1,521 were recorded as being free. In Birchtown, 200 Black families were recorded. In Shelburne, there were 70 Black families recorded. The Black Loyalists of Shelburne and Birchtown earned their living, in the fishery business, cutting wood, clearing land, hunting, and domestic servants and laborers. Their homes were referred to as pit houses. Pit houses were a hole that was dug in the ground with moss covering the areas between the logs that sheltered it. They lived in those pit houses for up to 10 years due to the fact that there were no provisions, no supplies that were provided to the Black Loyalists. And if they did get supplies, they would have to walk 8 kilometers along the Birchtown Bay in which to carry those supplies. The Black Loyalists were part of a larger wave of Loyalist immigration, which numbered over 30,000. The sudden influx of so many people put a strain on the resources of the Nova Scotia government. The Black Loyalists encountered unfair and unequal treatment. They were given smaller plots of land and fewer provisions than white settlers. Some did not receive anything at all. Black laborers also were paid lower wages than white laborers for the same work. And as a result of that, in 1784 was the first race riots in North America. A local preacher established a church in North Shelburne known as Blacktown. He preached to both Black and white residents at that time. The white residents of Shelburne and Birchtown became upset because he was teaching and preaching to white settlers. In July 1984, local white laborers and disbanded soldiers drove Black people out of Shelburne because they blamed them for low wages and unemployment. Black Loyalists would regularly take lower paid jobs because they had to feed their families. But as a result of that, it did cause what we called the first race riots in North America. The white Loyalists assaulted and destroyed Blacktown and anything in the town of Shelburne that reminded them of the African people. Black Loyalists were chased to Birchtown, where they were prevented from leaving for up to 10 days. Black people were also faced with discriminatory local bylaws that penalized them for their Negro frolics or dancing or loitering. Negro frolics was prohibited in Shelburne. If they were arrested for having fun, they were thrown into the poorhouse to serve time. Black Loyalists served their Loyalist owners as domestics, laborers, and farmhands. By 1790, many Black Loyalists had become dissatisfied with conditions in Nova Scotia. In 1791, Thomas Peters, a Black pioneer, went to the British government and petitioned several times for them to give the land to the Africans. And England ignored him and brushed him off, showed him no respect at all. But he did not stop there. He continued to fight. One of his descendants, Juanita Peters, is the executive director of Africville. So I would suggest that if you have an opportunity to come to Nova Scotia, that you come to the Black Loyalists, Africville, and to the Black Cultural Center. We'd love to have you there. So in 1792, we call this the year of the Exodus. Community leaders, as I stated, had petitioned the British government to fulfill promises, but they were not fulfilled. So in 1792, about 1,196 of Nova Scotian Blacks took an offer from the Sierra Leonean Company, which was a British anti-slavery organization, to resettle in Sierra Leone, located on the Atlantic coast of West Africa. These Black Loyalists left on ships, 15 of them in January of 1792. The exodus was approximately 3 months long, with more than 60 people losing their lives from disease, illness, heartbreak, and probably hopelessness. Arriving in Sierra Leone, Freetown was not much better. No systems had been set up. The feeling of hope and despair once was present. The journey was known as we call hashtag Exodus to Sierra Leone. Several years later in Nova Scotia, the economy and the population declined, and many Black Loyalists at that time decided to relocate to other parts of Nova Scotia. For this trip to Sierra Leone, there were warnings to the British government about this expedition. One Black leader wrote that those who went to Sierra Leone, which is now Freetown, would face their utter annihilation. White leaders observed and felt the economic loss of this exodus. So what we have on the screen right now, it might be a good time to stop after this, I'm not sure, but you can guide me. So we have, right here, we have 48 of the 52 distinct communities throughout Nova Scotia. So this would be where the Black Loyalists would have settled and are still settled in these areas. And I just have to bring up my friend Liz here. My friend Liz is talking to me about a project for us to connect to those communities, just to make sure they're good, because we haven't really checked in with each other. And I think it's important that we do that as a unique community. So as you can see, Shelburne is right up there as number 1 on the map. Shelburne had the largest relocation from New York of Africans. Next to that, as you can see, was Birchtown, where they would have ended up at some point. And then we have Yarmouth and Greenville. So when the Black Loyalists were taking that exodus of 1792 to Halifax, they went along the coast and they went along the shore, such as Shelburne, Yarmouth, Greenville. A lot of people didn't go further than that. A lot of people stayed there. So the people in those areas of Nova Scotia are considered to be Black Loyalists as well. Does anybody here know any of those places? Especially, yeah, okay, good, couple, okay, we got our Scotians that are all, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, yes, we got, okay. So it's right. I think it's time we educated New York a little bit more on. We'll do that eventually. We'll work together to make sure we all understand. Oh, there you go. See, she's dropping history on us here. So it's amazing. Do you want to stop to eat or, yeah? Does anybody have any questions or? I could keep going. I mean, okay, so we're gonna stop right now so I can eat too. And I'll come back up when that's done. So thank you so far. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Now that we've had a chance to eat our entrees, we're going to have Andrea come up and finish the rest of her presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Scott. So in 1989, members of the Birchtown community established the Shelburne County Cultural Awareness Society. This would later become known as the Black Loyalist Heritage Society. The Black Loyalist Heritage Society is committed to discover, interpret, safeguard, and promote the history and heritage of the Black Loyalists and their descendants, and to the advancement of the universal recognition of the Black Loyalists as a nascent Canadian heritage community. The picture that's on the screen right now is what we call the Black Memorial Ground. So that ground shows tribute to the Blacks who would have landed or been thrown off the ship at that area there. There's lots of rocks there. So the hardships would have been real. There was a research done and 2 archaeological digs were done in Birchtown. They did not find any human remains at that particular location, but they did find other artifacts and other items of interest. It's a very serene place. It's been designated as a historical location, and it sits right there where the Black Loyalists can go. There's benches you can sit, you can have a time of healing, you can have a time to just think about what that journey would have been like for the Black Loyalists. Between 1984 and 1997, the Black Loyalist Heritage Society acquired several properties in Birchtown to create a heritage site and museum complex. The Black Burial Ground is designated as a National Historic Site by Parks Canada in 1996. St. Paul's Anglican Church, also on site, was built between 1888 and 1905 and was in use until the 1980s. It was deconsecrated in the late 1990s. There's also an old schoolhouse that was built in 1835, and it was active up until 1961. It was an integrated school between both Black and white students. In Nova Scotia, that's rare. In Birchtown, it happened. So Birchtown was somewhat progressive than other communities in terms of having both Black and white students learn together in the same classroom. In 2000, the Black Loyalist Heritage Site in Birchtown was open to the public. In 2006, there was a setback. The Black Loyalist Heritage Society's administration building was destroyed in an arson attack. The person that committed that crime was never brought to justice. This is something that remains open in the hearts and minds of the Black Loyalists and the community as a whole. Artifacts and records were sadly lost. Up to 20 years of artifacts, as a matter of fact, and records was destroyed. In 2015, the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre was built and was officially opened. And just to let you know that the building is still quite young. Next year will be 10 years for the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre. We hope to have a celebration and invite all of you guys, if you'd like to come to that celebration. I'll see, I have to do a lot of fundraising to get you all there, but I'll do it. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about just the beauty of that center and the opportunity that I had to come back home to be the executive director of such a wonderful site. I was born in Shelburne, grew up there, went to school there. One thing I missed out on was the history. In school, we learned about other empires such as the Greek empires and all the other big news historically, but we never learned about our own history. And I kind of look at that as a failure. So if there's any reparations or reconciliations that needs to be done, it's got to be with our education for a start. We need to make sure that we educate those coming behind us so that we can continue to tell those stories. I never thought at my age, I'm not 60 yet, but I'm close to 60. I never thought at my age that I would be considered an elder, but I am. And so I take that seriously within the community because I get to talk to the young people. I get to talk to the community about the stories. I never lived those stories, but our families all faced hardship. So we do have some lived experience of what it would be like that we can share out. So a little bit about the Book of Negroes. I think it was already spoken about earlier, but Lawrence Hill, the author, has become quite a good friend of mine. So I called him up and I told him I was coming here. And he said, "Oh, great." I said, "Is that it? Like, is that all you're going to say? Lawrence Hill, like you wrote the book, right?" He said, "Oh, great." I was like, "Okay." I said, "Well, I will keep you posted on how well it goes here." And also the fact that I was going to bring a couple of copies of that book with me, but I had a carry-on. And so they already got me with what did they give me? The bottle of water, I think. So I'm not on good terms with customs and stuff, right? Just a little bottle of water. But the Book of Negroes is a set of two ledgers, and it said earlier on that it lists the names, ages, and description information of about 3,000 enslaved African Americans, indentured servants, and freed men that were evacuated from the United States along with British soldiers at the conclusion of the American Revolution. The book is more than just a ledger that recorded the names of the Black Loyalists and enslaved Africans. It contains also a wealth of stories. I was asked to incorporate into the presentation some information on two women who appeared before the commission at Fraunces Tavern. But you guys all know the exhibit upstairs is fantastic and it speaks of those two women. I had to reach out to some friends who are historians to get some of this information, but I can see that a great job was done with this exhibit. So wherever you got the information from, good on you, Scott, and everyone else that put it together. But we do have some information that was provided to me as well. So I'll just go quickly through it. Judith Jackson, there's a mention of two Judith Jacksons in the Book of Negroes. So the one that we're going to speak about right now is Norfolk to Nova Scotia, Crooked Road to Freedom. So now I got to look at my PowerPoint. So before being evacuated from New York, a claim against Judith Jackson and her child is submitted by Jonathan Elbeck. He asserts that Jackson is not free and had been purchased by himself from his brother-in-law, John Clan. Despite evidence proving her freedom, including being in possession of a certificate of freedom, the decision in Jackson's case is postponed. While awaiting the decision, Elbeck attempts to capture Jackson and her child. Although Jackson escapes, she is unable to save her child, who was sent by Elbeck to Virginia. Elbeck also robs Jackson of her money, clothing, and certificate of freedom. Judith Jackson is ultimately able to evacuate New York in August of 1783 aboard the ship Ranger, bound for Port Mattoon. As I stated to you earlier, my fifth great grandfather, Jupiter Farmer and Venus Farmer, were also in Port Mattoon around the same time, but they came on a different ship. Judith Jackson is recorded alone in the Book of Negroes as a stout wench, age 53. She is not recorded as having any certificate of freedom. So another person I've been asked to speak briefly about is Dinah Archer as well on the exhibit upstairs. In the exhibit upstairs, beautiful information that's contained there. Dinah Archer, known as Archer, escapes enslavement from John Bain of Crane Island in Norfolk, Virginia in 1780. She travels with a local camp under the commander of Sir George Collier and General Matthews to New York. During the evacuation of New York, a claim is filed against Archer by William Farrier. She had in fact been sold to Farrier by John Bain. However, Farrier was never issued a bill of sale and subsequently abandoned Archer when he returned to England. With nowhere else to go, Archer returned to Bain where she stayed, until escaping the British lines. At her hearing, Archer is able to produce a certificate of freedom from General Birch. Although admitting to once being a slave to Farrier, she is able to satisfactorily prove her service to the British and entitlement to freedom under the proclamations made during the Revolution. So as we know, information is still being gathered. We have information that they were not, that they were, so we're still exploring this information. And it also depends on the source of information as well, when we're gathering this information. This was provided to me by a good source, which I have not cited in this PowerPoint, but I can definitely advise you of where that information had come from. So I think that's it. Dinah Archer evacuates New York aboard the Grand Duchess of Russia, bound for Port Roseway, which is in Shelburne, in September of 1783. In the Book of Negroes, she is recorded as a stout wench, one-eyed, age 42. She is also recorded as being indentured to a Mrs. Savage at the time of departure. So this is the information that I have. And again, it's I'm hoping it's credible. It came from a great source, but again, I'd like to be able to continue to work with the center here so that we can continue to find out more stories, including Jupiter and Venus Farmer and Titus Milliner, which are my family. So I can fly down again on my own coin. I won't expect you to pay. I can fly down again. And I think it's something that we could continue to work with because the stories are there. The information we have is there. And I know if we put our minds to it, we're going to be able to come up with and share these wonderful pieces of history that we all are lacking in our lives and kind of connecting us to each other. I know, she keeps going on. Dinah Archer, I think I did it twice, I think, on that one. There you go. So in 2015, the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre was open. To date, the center has had well over 40,000 visitors through its door. So in July of 2022, I was fortunate to be hired as the executive director of the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre. I took on this role with an honor to continue to tell the story with care and respect and to represent the community well. When I was growing up in Shelburne and Birchtown, I was never taught about the history of the Black Loyalists in school, even though the history was right in my backyard. I have had the opportunity to be featured in the New York Times, the Weather Network, CBC, Global News, Saltwire, CNN. A lot of them come running to our doors. They want information. But I always ask, what's in it for me? What's in it for us? If you want to tell the story, please tell it so that we can be part of it and don't tell it without us. But I would like to say that more expressly, I'm here with you right now, and this is the most memorable visit ever. So I can add you to the top of the list now. In front of the New York Times, I'm going to put down my visit here. I also had a beautiful visit to Washington as well, and I had an opportunity to visit several museums there. It was mind-blowing. But a quick tour of this museum last night led me to believe that Americans take their history extremely serious. I think even more serious than politics. I'm not going there, but I just thought I would say that. So I would like to also, I have a composition or also a little poem I'd like to read to you as well. But I would like to also state that the Black Loyalist Heritage Society is working on several projects. So about 5 of the projects is the No. 2 Construction Battalion, which is made up of our men who were not allowed to fight because they were told World War I was a white man's war. And so what they were only allowed to do was infrastructure, carry water, carry dead bodies, whatever else it was. So in several small communities, and I just recently came back from Amherst, Liz, yes, where a monument was actually unveiled in Amherst. And they're going around the Nova Scotia communities, the ones that you see on the map. And we're unveiling monuments that recognize and identify and contribute to who we were and recognize what we've done for this community, our legacies and our stories. We're also looking at the repatriation of the Book of Negroes from Kew, England. So we've started that process, hence the reason why, thank you so much. I got in touch with the council, the government council for England. So I dropped her a couple of business cards and a membership card and some other things. So she says, oh no, that's not my office. Like government officials do, right? That's someone else's office. So she gave me a name of someone. That was really good for her to do that. And she said, go for it. Go for it. So King Charles is going to be hearing from us. We're also working on a project called the African Nova Scotia Seafarers Project. Unbeknown to a lot of people, Africans were in the fishing industry before it was what is now the fishing industry in Nova Scotia. My uncle had 3 fishing boats, one of the few Black men that actually had a fishing boat. Blacks were also responsible for shipbuilding. A lot of them built some of the ships that are coming out of the buildings that were in Shelburne. Shelburne was a huge shipbuilding community. And so a lot of the workers actually were part of that. We're working on our genealogy lab right now. So we're trying to connect all of those communities to our to the genealogy lab that we are setting up at the Black Loyalist Heritage Society. And first and foremost, and lastly, is our strategic planning. We're constantly updating our strategy plan because everyone wants this 5-year plan, right? I can't even get through a 1-year plan, but you know, they want to create 5 years. Scott, you probably understand. Any executive directors? Boards, take it easy on your EDs, just saying. I know nothing, but just take it easy on us because we do work hard and this is a fantastic place here. And I truly feel privileged to be part of this wonderful, wonderful session today. But before I go, I just want to read you something that I actually wrote, I think it was last year, and I wrote it kind of quickly. So I do apologize if I stumble just a little bit here. It's called Oh Birchtown. Oh Birchtown. Oh, how you have suffered. Oh, how you have thrived. Oh, how you have provided. How have you survived? You accepted our ancestors in a special unity. You were once known as the largest Black community. The fighting took place known as the First Race Riot. Sadly, this was what brought us to quiet. Our people were pushed to your astounding embrace. They made the best of the worst, withholding disgrace. You were not ready to receive their traditions and ways. With over 3,000 strong, they weathered the days. A home made of sticks with a hole in the ground. Is this freedom that only they found? I'd rather be home than to live on this cold, dark land. So together they stood up and took a stand. They left on 15 ships with their freedom to own and landed on homeland known as Sierra Leone. You dug up our ground and you know we were there. Artifacts, facts, we are still here. Here where they were not meant to survive, their resiliency and determination is what made them thrive. You are home of the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre, and your land has taken on the role as a mentor. So many have come here to research their story in hopes of one day bringing us glory. You have never let us down. Your land is our place. Thank you, O Birchtown, for giving us this space. Thank you.
We'd like to thank both of you, Elizabeth and Andrea, for attending our event, for contributing to the stories and the information that we are trying to present to the public and continue to develop and increase and build on and we appreciate everything that you've done and continue to do for these stories. We're just going to present a small certificate of appreciation for both of you for attending and for presenting tonight. So if you could come up.